is going to be our first panel, the panel of investors. And I would like to ask Nico is to finish your email, and Davorin and Zoltán to come up on the stage, please. A warm applause, please, for these gentlemen. Davorin is the president of the Croatian Business Angel Network. He's also the founder. He has a TV channel. He owns the Formula One rights in Croatia. He's also the advisor to the president of Croatia at this young age. I mean, I don't understand this, but there you go. So we have Nico from Slovenia. I mean, we could be here all night to talk about what he's doing. I don't know if he sleeps or not. I don't know how he does. He's involved with more than 1,000 startups. So I have no concept about that. How he does. And he also he comes here to Budapest and gives talks on universities. I don't understand this. So, and Zoltán, he's been involved with household name media for 25 years. He's the investor of 10 companies. He had a very nice exit in 2016. So I think there's a huge experience here in the audience. One thing, the questions, now you can use dual box when the panel starts. You can ask questions, and we're gonna use those questions and give it further. And this is the moment when I would love to ask our moderator to the stage, Lisa Fassel. She's the managing director of the Austrian organization. She's a supporter of female founders and an overall wonderful person. So give a huge applause to the whole panel. And
first of all, could you just give us again a short introduction about who you are, what you do, and what is actually your real job that you're making money with?
That's a good question. That you actually make some money with. Yeah.
We're gonna have fun tonight.
Of course. Okay. Yeah. So perhaps I can start. So my name again is Zoltán Vardi. I'm a media and entertainment industry investor and entrepreneur. My background very much is a traditional corporate background. I was CEO for one of the big broadcasting groups in Hungary called TV2 for many years. Also CEO for regional business at ProSiebenSat.1, and then a senior vice president at NBC Universal in London. So I come with a very global kind of corporate background. I started as an angel investor in 2011 after I left my role at TV2 and here in Budapest. Started focusing on companies in the ad tech and marketing tech space. Made an investment in a couple of different companies, including one you'll be hearing about tonight, Antavo, as well as a company that we successfully exited called Brainient, which is a Romanian original ad tech company that was sold to a very large French global concern. My interest in the space is driven partly because, like most investors, I'd like to make a profit, but I also like to emphasize that ultimately my motivation is also to see these fantastic entrepreneurs take an idea and turn it into something significant. And I think that's an incredibly satisfying part of this type of involvement, where you can really see the germ of an idea grow into something that really is valuable from a business perspective. So that certainly for me is a big motivation as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. We were talking about sleeping and Nico sleeping. So I started my first company when I was 20. Just my only goal was not to wake up early in the morning. And I think you need to have a goal. And then, so I started one little web design studio back in 2002. After this, I started to work in media. I founded one little local newspaper. Then I took over regional free-to-air TV station. Then I opened a chain of bars because I didn't want to be kicked out from the bars. You need to have a place for drinking. Then the biggest project was in 2011. I succeeded to beat the biggest national TV channels, and I acquired the media rights of Formula One for Croatia. And that's one proof that everything is possible. I was 29 back then, and I just went to Bernie Ecclestone, his office in Prince's Gate in London, and arranged a deal with them, and I became the world's youngest Formula 1 rights holder. And of course, from that moment, it was extremely boosty for the contacts, for the networks, and I think networking is the most important thing in the world. Later I founded Creator TV, that's the sports TV channel in Croatia, Bosnia, and now we'll broadcast in Slovenia and Serbia. And we have TV production, we have onboard vans, we have ENG crews, we are working commercials for Uber, for Monster Energy, Red Bull, and such names. But I'm the man who cannot say no, and that's my problem. And I'm currently in 10 projects. But the mainly I'm earning money from Creator TV, from other investments. I'm advising Croatian president. I'm an active pilot, and I traveled through more than 80 countries of the world. So everything. Thanks.
Thanks for this short introduction.
Hi, my name is Nico. Started quite early when it was possible to open companies in East Europe. This was in the 80s, end of 80s. Actually, my parents opened the company, and that's why when my entrepreneurship started, they didn't speak English, so I had to travel with them, translate all the business, and that's how it started. And after that, I was learning through opportunities, opening partnership, selling contact lenses. Actually, we learned from US in '95. I was learning from him actually that having a bar is nice, but I opened a club, so it was also not to be kicked out, you know, to stay there long enough. Making concerts, have agency for concerts, and after that actually writing a book, one of the first books about venture capital in 2000, creating a first private incubator in 2001, financing on my own, and since then average one project per year we privately invest or develop on our own. One of them, more known, it's In Your Pocket City Guides, that we expanded from Australia to Aruba, actually in more than 200 cities, having city guides, printing more than 15 million guides online and apps. And last few years actually focus a little bit more on ICO projects. So this year we are kicking out one in May, one in June. So that's the latest things that we do. And I'm most proud that we did with Antal and actually investors from 6 countries. First cross-border investment of business angels that is actually today celebrating first year since agreement.
I think you deserve an applause for that. I mean, first big cross-border deal, and now we're celebrating it, that it's 1 year old. I think he deserves an applause, or actually the whole team. So, for all of the people who haven't done the first investments yet, I would like to talk a bit about your first deals. Because what we see in Austria is that the startup thing is getting super hyped, and everyone is talking about startups and how awesome it is, and everybody wants to invest. Hardly any people know how to do it, so we should also talk about this part. But we see that a lot of them are scared of the first deal or a bit afraid because they just don't know what to do and how to find the perfect startup. So can you share a bit thoughts on your first deals, basically, why you invested and what the startups were doing?
So when I began my journey as an angel investor, I actually did quite a bit of research. So I went out and I actually met with at least 24 venture capital firms operating either in Hungary or in the region or even in the UK with a focus on Central and Eastern Europe. And I basically just introduced myself and said, here I am, I've got this particular background, I consider myself an expert in international business development, I understand the media and entertainment industry, you know, is there anything we can talk about? And what happened is that, 3-4 months later, I started getting calls from various VCs saying, hey, we are looking at a deal now, would you be interested in co-investing? And so I would say that one of the first lessons I learned, which was very useful, was to look for partners and look for co-investors who you can share the risk with and also share a little bit of the due diligence portion of the process. Having said that, I think that one of the lessons I learned from my own first investment, which, the rule is your first investment always sucks. I can raise my hand, my first investment really sucked. I lost all my money, which is unfortunate, but the reality, the learning for me was, as much as you can co-invest with others, you have to make your own decisions about what is good for you and what is not. And so I would encourage anybody who begins this journey to look for partners, but ultimately take responsibility yourself for the investments you make. As far as lessons I've learned, broadly speaking, from the investment experience I've had, I find that ultimately the success of a business depends on two fundamental factors. The first is what we'd call product market fit, which means, do you have a product or service that people are willing to pay for, and can you scale that appropriately so that you get more and more people to pay more and more money over time? The second is the character of the entrepreneurs. And what I mean by character is, you know, the difference between a good idea and a successful business, the gap is literally the size of the Grand Canyon. And the journey you take to move it from that idea to an executable business depends on somebody or somebodies who have unbelievably commitment and are committed and persistent to walk that path, which is absolutely miserable on some days, and on some days you feel like you're at the top of the world. And so what I've learned is that ultimately you invest in a good idea and ultimately in people who you believe are going to stick with it when the time gets tough. And I can guarantee you there will be tough times. So so that's what I think is my biggest lesson. So you really want to make sure you do business with people you really believe are committed to this whatever business they're pitching you.
Thanks. Davorin, your first investment.
Yeah, it was back in 2014, so I'm a fresh investor, and I invested in one company called Zima Digital. They were creating applications, innovative applications for the biggest European toy productioner, Smoby, I think. And so I invested in them, and first year was okay. Second year, 2015, I realized that we have 4 people working for the company, 3 CEOs and 1 worker. So I said, guys, I think you need to change everything. So, but now this year I finished acquiring the whole company, so I own 100% of the company, and it's one of my companies in Creator Group. So I think that's not the destination I wanted, because Business Angels doesn't want to be CEOs. We don't want to run the companies. We want to advise, but we are avoiding any operational things. And I think that needs to be clear, because most of the startups are just expecting that we will invest and then run the company. No, we will not. So that was my first investment, and I'm not so happy, but at least I didn't lose the money because that company is working well now. But I agree with Zoltan, team is the most important thing. Idea is just 1%. 99% behind is persistence, creativity, persistence, because this is the most important thing. And recently, of course, Business Angels are investing in teams. So, but if you're looking for investment, you need to investigate. Today you have Google, you have everything. It's easy to investigate. You need to ask. You need to check track record, because there is a lot of fog. And if somebody gives you different answers from this, I think you need to see if that's person right to you. And for each startup is, I think the most important thing is one pager. Because today we are receiving hundreds of documents, of business plans. I've personally seen hundreds of business plans, and I think none of them was okay, and none of them was real. But you need to firstly investigate and look for a suitable investor. Then you need to send the one pager, because if one pager is okay, I think you have better chance, and you will always get the 10 seconds. Less than elevator pitch, because for example, I was in need to meet the CTO of City of New York, Minerva, 2 years ago, and so of course no response on emails, no response on phone calls. She's CTO of City of New York, and so I picked one event. I knew that she will be there, and I got my 10 seconds, and I presented what I need, and then she called me back, because those 10 seconds in your presentation, your attitude is most important, and you need to be concrete. So based on the people here, I think we need to focus on advices for startups, because I think there's a lot of people who wants to do investments here. But my first investment was lousy, but I will say about my last investment. Excellent company, excellent investment at the beginning. They established company last year, so 3 founders, and I decided to invest in them. They were chasing me. They were chasing me, and so in the first year, 300,000 euros of revenue, 80,000 euros of pure profit. For first year, it was amazing. And then all 3 co-founders start to fight each other. And then company stagnated, and so we have 6-year period of stagnation. And company is decreasing, and that's one of the biggest problems, managing the companies. So I think we need to focus about managing the companies, and you need to have clear situation, because fights are not good, and you can destroy company in a month. Thanks.
So thanks for bringing this whole team thing up, and also the occasion of a founder clash. So Nico, question to you. What is your investment criteria, and how do you figure out whether you want to invest into a team or not? So how much is gut feeling actually, and how much is hard facts? And how do you, well, manage to figure out if the team is great or not?
There are quite some criteria, but also in team there are criteria. I will give you an example. On Monday, for example, I was in committee of selecting the startup of the year for Slovenia. I can say they're very good projects. You can fall in love immediately. Some of them already raised more than $500,000 actually on Kickstarter. So they get support, and they're quite, how to say, sexy projects to invest. But when you dig deeper, you actually get, you have to dig in teams, in relationships, and all the elements what you do. Lately we use some, because there's a lot of projects coming, more than 100 projects per year, using some analytical tools, getting insights, for example, to analyze the teams. And we have 7 key criteria for teams to analyze, from flexibility to persistence to all the elements that are needed actually to deliver. Because talk is cheap. Today, you go to YouTube, you can learn how to pitch like a startup, perfectly. Nobody's teaching much us investors how to actually pitch back. But we learn through the failures, and this is like pretty expensive. My failures in startups were much more expensive than my scholarship at Harvard. So, and also I learned, and you learn through your mistakes. Hopefully, not repeating the same one enough. So I would say. There's a lot of package. There's a lot of standardized processes. When you look in Slovenia or if you look in Hungary, it's some standards what they learned. I'm also a professor on MBA programs, so I see what students learn and how they structure. In the same structure, the pitch is exactly this canvas, this exactly 10 slides they should do, this exactly $500,000 to us, up to business. So it's very standardized. But what is behind? How to get behind all the nice things. One of the last investments that we did, for example, was in one entrepreneur that was agreeing everything with us. So at the beginning, looked perfect, he was agreeing with everything, but he was agreeing with everyone everything. So this way, he was too flexible. He was not focused on what to do. I don't need somebody. If everybody agrees with me, then somebody's, so somebody should not be in the room. We are not here just that somebody is agreeing with us just to get our cash. And also we are not charity or cash machine, or we are also not how to say, we are not against the startups. But in one of the startups, for example, with New Year, no matter that they were making 38% EBITDA, we had to change the CEO, owner and CEO. It's not only about profit, it's like scalability, what they said. Excel can make everything. All the hockey sticks can look perfect. One of the startups was presenting on Friday. They were making 50K, but in 3 years they're going to make 25 million. Oh yes. And team, for example, totally Slovenian, looking for Slovenian capital and looking for Slovenian funding, but world global domination. It will not happen. I will give you one example how we invest in ICOs, for example. If there are not 2 members of the team, at least 2, that are from 2 other continents than Europe, we are not investing. So at least one person from Asia, Australia, Africa, or this is the simple condition that we created, because you cannot create global team in a village.
You need to think globally. Everybody's thinking, okay, I will first try a local market. But I think that's wrong. You should aim for the global at the first moment, because you're losing energy and time. And you have whole world. So that's, Nico is saying, is great.
Especially in digital business area. Of course. So now we talked a lot about things that can go wrong. We talked about your first investments that didn't work out that great. But what keeps you going as a business angel, as an angel investor? So what are the happiest moments you've experienced with your companies? Or most exciting ones?
Well, look, I think the business angel in some ways has the luxury of taking a step back and picking their spots of where they get involved in a particular business. So it's not quite the roller coaster ride that an entrepreneur has. But I think, for me personally, as I said this in my introduction, I think one of the biggest things I get from this whole involvement, and I'm actually a mentor in a number of companies in which I'm not a specific investor, but I'm also quite active in helping the founders to build their businesses, is just seeing the progress that they make and seeing how they can actually stretch beyond the limits that they've set for themselves with the proper coaching and a proper direction that comes from that kind of business angel relationship. I have to say that perhaps one of the proudest moments I had recently was, again, as I mentioned, I'm an early investor in Tavo, and I think just 2 weeks ago we had a board meeting, and the CEO had sent through the deck, and on that deck there was the organizational structure, because we had just closed a big round, and I can see now we've got a 35-person staff, and you got a very active international sales force and all that stuff, and I'm just thinking, God, even 2 years ago all of this was a complete dream, right? And all of a sudden you're seeing it on paper. And I remember it was 11 o'clock at night, and I was looking at the presentation before the board meeting the next day, and I sent a note to these guys, say, God, congratulations, it's amazing to see this now on paper, all the things we talked about all of a sudden come to life. And so I think that's a really good feeling when you feel like you can contribute to that type of growth and development.
Thanks. Happiest moments for the two of you?
Happiest? I didn't experience exit yet. I suppose this is the happiest moment. No happy end. But happiest moment is to see startup after failure succeeding. Because one startup I invested in, Unique Travel Set, they tried to build unique travel sets for traveling for women, and I even arranged a commercial on the screens on Times Square, and we had big promotion, and that product didn't succeed. And those girls were completely down, they wanted to quit, and I said, girls, failure is just part of success, because I personally failed 3 times in business, and it was nasty. It was really nasty. But of course, failure is, as I said, part of success, and I can guarantee this. If you're persistent, you will pick everything best from the failure and implement in the next project, and you'll succeed. So those girls stood up and started a new project with the experience from the previous project, and now they're signing a $10 million investment in Silicon Valley. So I think that was a really happy moment. It is not done yet, but I think seeing them stepping up and continue journey, I think that was a good moment for me.
They're still doing the unique travel sets?
No, it will be a different product.
I would say it's a kind of addiction. All of us were entrepreneurs, used to be mostly entrepreneurs ourselves. So when you have this adrenaline that is running you, when you run the company, you get part of this story, part of these emotions also when you're involved as business angels. Of course, depends on you. There are many different types of business angel. One, for example, a friend of mine who's also a business angel, investing together with me. He's just sailing around the world for the 3rd time, but matching up the investment. He did his exits. He does his way investment. For me, I pick up 1 project per year where I will be active. So actively, weekly involved, daily if it's needed, helping to pitch, helping to get the investors on the board also. So when you believe in this, it's like being part of the startup family. So relationship between between startup and investor can be as strong as a relationship or even stronger in the company. So when you look at the partners, usually there's few partners. And this relationship it's like not just falling in love, but you have to keep the relationship going.
I would ask one more question regarding portfolio management, because you already mentioned that it's not the job of a business angel to be there on a daily basis and do the operative daily business work, but what is the role of a business angel actually? So what is he or she supposed to do and bring to the startup? And how much time do you personally invest per startup or in all of your portfolio companies per week?
So if I look at my own day-to-day involvement, it varies significantly depending on if there's a transaction or if there's a particular big board meeting coming up. On a day-to-day basis, however, I'm not involved in any of my portfolio companies because otherwise I'd be managing them. So that's not the point. I think what a business angel brings to the table, you'll hear this, we're looking for people with the right network or with the right skill set, and some people are experts in IT. I happen to be an expert in business development, particularly international business development. So in terms of my insights and my experience, I can offer that to my my companies because of my professional experience. I actually think that's secondary to the one fundamental thing that a business angel can provide, which is just perspective. And what I mean by that is that when you're an entrepreneur, you are neck deep in crap all the time because you're dealing with constant day-to-day challenges and problems, and we thought this was going to happen, but this happened, and what are we going to do, and all that stuff. And basically, I think if you are a business angel, you can kind of you have the luxury of taking a step back, and very similar to what you just described in your experience, of just to say, guys, okay, so this didn't work, but the world's not over. Actually, it's just part of the process. And I think a very, very specific example is one of the companies I was involved with was there was an investment offer on the table about a year ago to buy the company out at what collectively we as a board thought was a significantly lower price than what it was worth. But I think the entrepreneurs were getting very tired, right? They were just getting like, okay, finally, we can at least, it's not what we were then, but let's just get it over with and let's move on to our next thing. And we all vehemently said, no, you're selling yourself short. Don't take this deal. And ultimately, the happy end is a year later, they got an investment for a significantly higher valuation than what they would have gotten a year before, simply by just riding that wave and getting their bearings back and looking ahead rather than behind. And so I think that's a case where I think having the right people around the table, having that relationship, the trust factor, so that these people felt like we weren't telling them this because of any personal interest. We were actually on their side to say you can do better. That was a real value.
So basic difference between angel investor and investor is that business angel is investing among the money. Beside the money, he's investing connections, energy, time, and as Zoltan said, perspective. Because if founders are listening, they can succeed quicker than alone. So I think that's the basic difference. And but sometimes, it is hard to draw the line. For example, I have some startups which are calling me constantly each day. Sometimes I'm answering, sometimes not. It depends, but it can be pretty busy, and I think ideal. So, for example, one board member of Crane, Hrvoje Prpić, he's an excellent investor, and he's saying to startups, you have 1 hour per week. And that's it. You have 1 hour per week and concentrate on that hour. I think that's a good approach. I still didn't manage, but I'm going toward this.
I would just like to compare maybe with teams. And business angel is like if you go to football, it's not Messi, it's not Ronaldo, but it's actually like Jurgen Klopp or like Zinedine Zidane. It's really coach of the team that is could be key element actually to win, no matter do you like Liverpool, Manchester, or some other team, or MVP, in basketball. So it's really the key person when you want to grow the company beyond what you are at the moment. So it's beyond the expectations, beyond the imagination. Everybody's talking about the numbers and zeros and things, but when you really have to scale, We had cases where we had to employ more than 100 people in a year. You know, people cannot imagine what does it mean. You know, when you're a one-man band running or three-man band running a few thousand euros business. So this scalability experience is really needed. And I see a lot of startups getting stuck in the speed of development. You know, how it's developed, and it's. You have a few questions later for Europe. You know, this is where also Europe. It's startups are getting very quickly in comfort zone. This depends also on nationality or how the perception is. But once when you're leading in the country, you know, you're not focused enough to really grow globally on not just A round but actually E round.
Question for the audience once again. How much is the average investment per business angel? Or how much was it in 2016? Is it 5K, 22K, 54K, or 110K? I know the answer, actually. Do you know the answer?
I think it's B.
I would say B.
Don't give them tips.
I don't know your answer.
I don't know the answer, but I'm guessing it's B.
But listen, I will explain. Okay, after your answer, I will explain if I'm
Yeah.
if I'm right.
This depends, you know, because we didn't talk about syndicated. You know, syndication is investment of few investors at the same time.
No, this is
So,
per business angel.
per business angel,
Per
but
business
still,
angel.
all.
Yeah. So now, of course, everyone said B. Or at least most
So,
B,
so
yeah.
Good guess.
I will explain. So my first investment was a mistake. So I invested 50,000 euros, and it hurts when you lose 50,000 euros. So I decided that I will invest up to from 5 to 50,000 euros, because if project is good, I want to see how startup will spend 50,000 euros. So if they are spending money well, other stages are not in problems, because if they know to spend 50,000, they will spend 50 and 200,000.
So there's a question for Davorin on the screen. So do you invest in startups that are ideas that will be the first to launch in that space?
Sometimes not, because today I think if you're looking for ideas, everything is invented. Almost everything is invented, and sometimes most of the money here are in the copies, unfortunately. So no, I'm looking for each kind.
We can bring the Euro perspective into that question. So US or China, what is your view regarding venture capital from Asia? Is it a viable route for startups from CE to look for first or second rounds from, let's say, Chinese VCs? Who wants to answer? Do we need Asian VCs and Silicon Valley VCs, or is Europe enough?
I can touch this question from a little different perspective. Slovenian unicorn was sold last year for 1 billion to Chinese.
Slovenia has a unicorn.
Slovenia have a unicorn called Talking Tom. It is getting more users than Twitter. This application, for example, it's now managed still by Slovenians, but with Chinese capital. And well, my wife has to manage this capital from Chinese, so it's really tough. I see every night, you know, how different mentality it is. No matter that it's pretty big money, but how different perception is, how different understanding of European and Asian thinking is.
For example, if you know company Rimac Automobili from Croatia, the fastest electric car in the world, they have Chinese capital inside, and Mate says, okay, he's happy.
So next question for Zoltan. The requirements for startups in the digital media industry.
Well, look, I don't know if there's anything specific in terms of requirement for digital media industry. I think you have the same requirements no matter what industry you get in, which is you've got to have a very clear, unique selling proposition to a very clear audience, and you need to be able to deliver that product or service at a reasonable cost. And of course, that's not a revolutionary idea, but I think it's just it's true for whatever industry you're in. I think what I find recently, and the reason I've actually strayed away from investments now in digital media and moved to a different area, which I'll talk about briefly, is I just see there's so many copycats out there. I mean, there must be, I don't know how many thousand ad tech businesses. I mean, there's a famous PowerPoint presentation slide where you see the value chain in ad tech, and there are literally so many logos on the page that you can't actually follow what's going on. So I think that sort of opportunities are, I don't want to say dead, but they're very difficult to find. Instead, what I focus now on which is actually the counterbalance to this whole digital thing, was actually live experiences. I believe very much that the experience economy is the future, and people want to people are going to spend more money on experiences than they are on things. And so what I'm focusing on right now is investments in live entertainment, in venues, in family type of venues, or any services or that support that industry. So if anybody has got anything in that space, I'm very much interested in talking to you about that. But in terms of this particular question, I think it's like with everything. You got to find the right product market fit and make sure you're committed to delivering it.
So what is your ultimate tip for everyone who wants to invest into startups or wants to improve his or her skills as an investor? And on the other hand side, your ultimate tip to finding the right investor for the startups in the audience?
My perception is add value. For example, as investor, if you don't see that you can add value to the team, move out. I reserve a few things. I invested from turkey farms in Hungary to charity in Asia, organization. So, but where I saw that I can add value. And for the startups, also when you look to investors, see, compare. Well, we were joking with Davorin, if you can drink as much as investors, probably that will be already a good match.
Thank you. My advice is for investors, for business angels, always, if you don't have experience, go to syndicated investments and follow you need to have one lead investor who is experienced and who will do most of the communications with the company. And for the startups, don't be afraid of asking and investigate. Investigate, you don't have excuse if you are not investigating the right investor. Like smart VCs are following good business angels. And we have lots of VCs in Europe, and I'm afraid that most of them are just living for the management fee. And I think that's the wrong perception.
So very quickly, 3 things. First, invest in areas and businesses that you can understand and appreciate and actually like. 2, invest in people who you believe will stick with it when the time gets tough. And 3rd, whenever possible, look for partners who share the risk and share the opportunity to get insights into the business.
Guys, thank you so much. It was so insightful and so much fun talking to you. Please give them a big round of applause.